Hi, welcome to Bookmark. I'm your host, Don Noble. Today's guest is fiction writer Rachel Hawkins, a native of Dothan, Alabama. After a dozen young adult or middle grade novels, Hawkins has turned her hand to adult fiction with remarkable success. Both The Wife Upstairs and Reckless Girls are smart, fun to read, real page turners. I spoke with Rachel Hawkins in Studio UA in the Digital Media Center on the campus of the University of Alabama. Rachel, it's nice to see you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
And thank you for driving over from Auburn.
I know, from enemy territory.
Making the trip. And you're living there now, but you did go to school there. You were an undergraduate there.
Yes, that's true. I was born in Virginia, and then my family moved to Dothan when I was about 18 months old or so.
Oh.
So yeah, very, very little when we came to Alabama. And so yeah, I grew up in Dothan and then did college in Auburn. I lived in Huntsville a little while after college and then ended up back in Auburn.
Is Huntsville where Sparkman High was?
Yes, well technically it's in Harvest, but you know how that is. We just say the big city nearby.
Right. Well, I was myself once a high school English teacher.
Yes.
And I liked it. And I liked the students, and I liked being in the classroom. In my case, I looked around me and I thought, I looked at my colleagues and I said, I don't think that I want to do this for 30 years. It's great, but it didn't have legs in that sense.
Exactly.
But for you taught for 3 years and then ran into a certificate problem?
Yes, so I don't know if you know, but there's a lot of red tape in education, turns out. So yeah, I was teaching under what at the time was like an emergency certificate.
Right.
So I did not have an education degree or traditional teaching certificate, but I had a degree in English.
Right.
And my husband was teaching science at this particular high school, and so they desperately needed an English teacher, I think like 5 seconds before school started. I literally was hired like at 4 o'clock the afternoon before school had started. So then I was going to grad school to get my master's in education and to get the sort of official certificate. But yeah, I just when I was about to finish, I had like 42 hours of credits or whatever. I was going to get that certificate. The state kind of changed its laws, and so I had not had to do student teaching because I already had a job teaching. And then at the last minute, they were like, actually, why don't you quit your teaching job you've had for 3 years and go teach for free for 6 months?
Well.
And I didn't want to do that.
No,
so.
that is the absolute. When I read that, I thought this is the most perfect example of bureaucracy I have seen in ages. You taught for 3 years, and they wanted you to stop and teach for free for half a year.
Exactly, so someone could come observe me. And I will say my school really tried to work with me on it and was great about it, and we tried to make it work. But at the same time, that was what. Then I was like, well. I'm sort of stuck, so.
But you had already begun writing. And if I'm not mistaken, you had published one middle grade or book while you were still a high school teacher.
It was right after I was a high school teacher. I was sort of writing it while I was still teaching.
Right.
So yeah, my first book, Hex Hall, which came out in 2010, was a YA kind of paranormal thing. So yeah, I was working on that while I was teaching.
I looked, and you may have a dozen books that are middle grade or YA. I want to ask about that. When I was a young man, YA didn't exist.
Yeah, same.
Young people read books. When we were little, you read the Bobbsey Twins and Nancy Drew. When you got a little older, you read Tom Sawyer and Black Beauty and so on.
Right.
Nobody imagined that there was supposed to be that writers were going to make books especially for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, and then again for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and so on.
Right.
But you did it, and it is a burgeoning field. I mean, it's a big deal now. A thing that didn't exist at all is now a very big deal.
Absolutely. And
what's special about it?
Oh man, there's so much.
When you write them, what do you write that's different from writing, aside from sex and violence?
Right, exactly, all the 4-letter words. No, I think you know, when I started out in YA, it's because I was teaching high school. And so I was reading what my kids were reading so that I could sort of keep up with what they were into.
Right, right.
And as I started reading YA, I had not realized, same thing, like it just did not really exist that much as a genre when I was a kid.
Right.
So yeah, I just thought like these are fun, you know, and they can be anything. And like you can have really serious issue books, you can have romance, you can have fantasy. I really loved the freedom that the genre gave. And I loved the idea, especially after I left teaching, of still working with books and kids, you know, just not grading their essays anymore. So.
Do those books get reviewed? What is the publicity mechanism for YA?
It's still pretty big. Like it was really interesting when I was doing that because they would send me out like on big book tours, like the big name adult authors get. But instead of doing media visits, like things like this or radio shows, we did school visits. And so that's really where they put a lot of their energy is to getting you in front of high school students and middle school students and things like that. So.
Right, and I was told by one Alabama YA writer that when you go to the school, you sell 100 of them.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Not 4.
Not 4, yeah, exactly. They really will, and some schools will even do a great thing of getting like the kids to order the books before you come, so that they can have something signed. And so yeah, no, it's quite the blitz for the schools. Yeah,
it really is. It's odd to think. It's as if the airplane were invented or something, and there's this whole new thing that did not exist, and now it really does, and there you are.
Right, exactly.
But you moved on. You were. As we all of us, whether we read or write or criticize or talk or whatever, we're all avid readers.
Yeah, exactly.
And you must have been an avid reader of sort of classical English and American literature. For example, Jane Eyre.
Yes. Jane Eyre was a big one for me. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Your version. It's a tricky thing to say. I mean, I'm happy to say explicitly that these are your books. They are not reworkings exactly of previous novels. They're special all by themselves. But yet you can't stop thinking that there was a Jane Eyre. And in Jane Eyre there is the girl, and then there is Rochester, or the man, the handsome, attractive man. You've made a Jane. All right, first of all, why did you set it in Mountain Brook?
Well, and I have to be careful here. You know, when I was conceiving of this book and really thinking about it, you know, at first it took shape as almost like a much more sort of generic thriller in a lot of ways, like sort of in that kind of Big Little Lies or stuff like that, where I was almost imagining these sort of Tony communities in Connecticut or California, that sort of waspy background.
Sure.
But
Greenwich would have worked.
Right, exactly.
Scarsdale.
Exactly. Lots of places where that kind of stuff happens. But then when I really started like digging into it, I thought, you know, why wouldn't I set it in a place that I'm familiar with?
Right.
Like, why not bring something that only I can bring to this particular party? And as soon as I came up with the idea for Mountain Brook, which actually I owe to a friend who had moved from Las Vegas to Alabama, and she had never been here. And so when she moved from Vegas, she had this idea. She told me that like everybody was just going to be super salt of the earth and like country people, I think is what she was thinking. And then she was like, and these people are playing tennis in pearls. And I was like, yes. Well, she was like, they're driving like Mercedes SUVs and all this. And I'm like, yes, we have our own enclaves like that as well. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I was like, right, like people maybe don't know that, you know, so why shouldn't I kind of peel back the veil a little bit?
Great fun. The original Jane, the English Jane, is educated, a governess, and virtuous. Your Jane is not educated and a thief.
Yes, exactly. Because I really wanted with this, I wasn't interested right from the beginning of doing sort of a beat for beat retelling of Jane Eyre. And I had said at one point to like my editor when we were working on it that I said, you know, the book has to work for people who've read Jane Eyre and loved it, for people who loved it, read it and hated it, and for people who've never even heard of it. Like it's still got to stand on its own. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do then with it was to spend some real time thinking, okay, what do these characters actually look like in the 21st century then? If I take someone with Jane's background, the really awful background she has in the original novel, how does that person maybe turn out a little harder, a little edgier, a little different in 2021?
In the 21st century,
yeah, exactly,
sure.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, My favorite little bit about your Jane, she is a dog walker. I got the biggest kick out of it. These women, they drive to the gym, to the front door of the gym, then they exercise. Then they get back in their car and drive home. Meanwhile, they've paid someone else to walk their dog, which is ridiculous.
Exactly.
But she steals from them a little bit, and she'll steal one earring.
Right.
Thinking that the woman who opens her jewelry box and finds one earring thinks she lost the other one.
Exactly.
She's a cunning little thing, your Jane.
She is. That little detail is in there to show that, like, yes, it's not, and again, that for her, it's not necessarily about, like, taking a pair of earrings and wearing them. You know, it's the taking is the thing, is the having one over on them.
And she needed also to pay the rent.
Exactly, money as well. Yeah, it's easy to pawn one earring too.
Now you have this girl of uncertain background and uncertain future, and she meets this remarkable man. He's more of a Rochester than she is a Jane, in a sense. He is a decent fellow, mostly.
Tries, yeah. He'd like to be, yeah.
And then down the street, there's a dead woman, and there's a certain amount of uncertainty about who is guilty of what as the novel rolls along. And that, of course, we can't go there in any depth.
Right. No spoilers, yeah.
But the social satire of the life of these people, it's so weak.
Yeah.
it's so shallow.
Right, exactly, which was a really fun thing to sort of dig into, like all these sort of little types that I think that we all know, and again, they exist in every little town, or so.
Well, it's no longer exciting to say so, but for years and years, people would say the great secret in America is class. Well, it's not a secret.
Not anymore.
Not really. We all know that there are strata and there are behavior patterns that go with each stratum, and she means to get the man. And, well, there's a price to pay there.
Indeed. And that was part of what was fun, too, about sort of making Jane a little edgier, and that she is this thief and all that. It was that I liked the idea that she walks into this sort of perfect seeming place and is like, I'm the criminal element. I'm the bad guy. Everybody else is obviously above board. And how quickly she realizes that is not the case at all.
They're really not. And I'd bet 50 cents easily that you've been asked more than once, have you heard from the citizens? Has anybody said, I'm from Mountain Brook and I don't like that, or I'm from Mountain Brook and that's not correct?
Only one, and it was like delivered like a friend of a friend type thing, so it's not somebody I knew. Most of the people that I know that live in Mountain Brook have loved it, because they see, and they also, I spoke to an all-women's book club from Mountain Brook, and they all were very appreciative of it. They thought it was really funny, because they recognized those types, and I think knew that I wasn't saying like, well, you're all like this.
No.
But yeah.
Well, one of the things that happens when you talk to novelists, always, any novelist will tell you that when you draw certain kinds of characters, and whether sometimes it's vice and sometimes it's just folly, but the people don't recognize themselves, they think that's somebody else.
Right, exactly. They're always they're the heroine of the story, always, or the hero of the story in their own mind. So yeah.
Well, you moved forward to the new book, Reckless Girls, and it had me going. It's fun. It's got pace. You can't say this. You can't say it's a desert island, but you can't say it's a paradise either.
Right.
Moreau Island in the Pacific is a real place. What happened there?
Yes, so it's the Moreau in the book is like based on a real place that's called like Palma. There is a real Moreau Island, but it's not in the Pacific, which hilariously I did not realize until after I had made my fake Moreau Island. But it's based on the Palmyra Atoll, which is in the South Pacific, and it's a very similar kind of vibe where people do stop there doing some more adventurous types of sailing. There is some World War II stuff. that's still there. And there was a murder that happened there quite famously in the 70s. So I sort of...
Was there a 18th century English ship that
No,
crashed
that
there?
was all me.
Ah,
Wanting to make it. When I conceived of this book and was talking about it with my editor, one of the things that we really talked about a lot was that because most of the book is set on this island, we wanted the island to be sort of like the house is in a Gothic novel.
Right.
So the house has all this personality and all these secrets and this dark past, and we wanted that for the island. So we just kept sort of digging deeper, like what else could we add to make this place feel extremely grounded and extremely scary as well.
Well, there's no house
Yeah,
at all.
yeah, exactly. So the island itself becomes the house.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I thought it was fun because it is, in a sense, a paradise. It is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. The water, the sand, the sun, the palm trees is just lovely. But every damn thing on that island is poisonous.
Right, everything will kill you, yeah.
if you swim, you get killed by a shark. If you catch a fish and eat it, the
Poisonous.
fish is poisonous.
Yep,
If you walk into the woods, there's any number of things out there to kill you. It is absolutely, it's just it's murderous.
Yeah.
And beautiful.
Right.
And that's the tension that you wanted.
Exactly. And
right.
that's again, what I was really thinking with this book was every time I'd think about like what are the great things about sort of that kind of travel and being on the ocean and the freedom and all that, there's always a flip side to it. So, you're off the grid and that's great. You're away from all the sort of stresses of the modern world, but also if you need help,
Oh.
You're out of luck. So,
Well, it's not a secret that this one boat, which is Lux, our heroine, and Nico, to me, a very slimy character. I didn't like him from the start.
nor were you meant to.
And they have these two girls with them, as Brittany and Amma.
Brittany and Amma, yeah.
All right,
Mm-hmm.
and they land. They think they're going to be there alone. Then there's another couple from Australia there, and then another guy shows up. So you get this ensemble of people. Well, let's take them in bits. I was suspicious of Nico as a player, an operator, slimy, right from the start.
Right.
Why wasn't Lux?
I think one of the things that was really interesting about writing Lux, she is definitely the most different character for me that I've ever written. It is a running joke with my friends that I think everything is trying to murder me at all times. All people are not to be trusted, that kind of thing. But Lux is because of her grief. She's dealing with an extreme loss at the beginning of the book. And I think it's made her more willing to trust somebody that's telling her the things that seem like what she wants to hear. I think it's left her more vulnerable to somebody like Nico.
Because he really takes advantage of her. Early in the book, she's working cleaning hotel rooms, and he's not.
Yes, yeah. And again, so much of the book, too, to me, was also about class in this, and that there's a sort of constant thread of people in the book talking about why do some people get away with things and some people don't? And it's class and it's gender a lot of the time.
But that's right. Both the books, to say that wealth has its privileges just barely starts. The wealthy are different from you and me, as Fitzgerald
Yes, indeed.
said. You don't strike me particularly as a worker of the world, subscriber to the
Yeah.
to the Daily Worker.
Yeah, yeah.
But both books have a kind of a poke in the eye for privilege.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was definitely just something that I was surprised to find that I was so interested in talking about. This is betrayal of former English teacher, but I don't always think about themes, as I'm going into a book. But then sometimes once they're done, I see like, okay, this is the idea that I keep coming back to, that I keep being interested in. This is what I'm trying to talk about here. And Reckless Girls is definitely another one in that theme, like The Wife Upstairs. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's endlessly fascinating. I think there's a lot to say about privilege and what money can do that's both good and evil. So,
And you can see that economic strata are clear enough. But what seems universal, I say universal, I don't think I'm giving anything away. All these people, in the end, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. Every single one of them has a dark secret of some sort.
Yes, yeah. Which,
Now,
yeah.
now, Rachel, is it your position in the world that everybody has one?
No, I definitely
No.
don't think so. I definitely don't think so. I know plenty of people that I think have zero dark secrets in their life.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. They're good souls. I keep them around because I need the balance. But no, with this one, like one of the things, again, that I was just super interested in this story is I love when conflict happens, not because like plot is kind of putting it into place, but because of like the organic things that come out of these group of characters. Like character's the most interesting thing to me to work with. Of
course.
Yeah. And so that was one of the things in this book was just like all these people have all this different stuff going on. And if they all hadn't ended up in the same place at the same time, none of this would have happened. Right. But because they did and because of who they are and the baggage that they're all carrying, we end up here.
And there's money. Nico may have a wealthy family. Do we think that he really does?
I would definitely meant for him to really do. And he's actually based on somebody that I knew, sort of, again, a friend of a friend sort of thing in college, who did just have like a massive trust fund. And as a result, lived as though he did not. Like he took kind of, menial jobs, like he worked at like a vineyard, like picking grapes or whatever for a while. But he could do that because he had all the money in the world to just fall back on. So he would just do things that he thought were very salt of the earth and fun, but he could quit at any time.
Yes, well that,
yeah.
well that is, if you can, it doesn't matter if you're in the box, if you can walk out of the box
Right.
whenever you choose.
Yeah.
Well, there are rich people in your books, and they're legitimately rich, but and the wealth obviously gives them a certain amount of power and flexibility and mobility. But where the money comes from is always a secret too. Now you have these Australians who seem quite elegant.
Right.
And they have a really nice boat. It's still a boat, isn't it? It's
yeah.
small enough to be a boat.
Yeah, it's a boat. Yeah.
It's a catamaran, I think, in their case. But one of the things that happens in both novels, not so explicitly in The Wife Upstairs, but one learns where the money came from. And that seems to be something that's on your mind as well.
Right, the dirty money aspect of it. Yeah. And again, I thought in that case, like it needed to be explained, like where Jake and Eliza's money is coming from. And again, that it seems they seem, especially like you said, elegant. They're glamorous.
They're nice.
They're nice. Yeah,
and they're generous.
They're generous. Yes,
yep.
they'll happily share all of the nice things on their boat. So yeah, it's also that sort of playing with expectations, and that like you never quite know what somebody is hiding.
Well, they all have secrets, and they're all on this island, and they're paired off. Well, there are 2 pairs, and then 2 odd girls and 1 odd guy. All right. But sexual fidelity, even in this, it's not very long. It's not a very long period of time that they're there. What are they, 2 weeks?
Yeah, just a few weeks, yeah.
And they can't seem to, pretty soon the sexual boundaries get busted.
Yeah, and that's just part 2 of that sort of building of tension, and of 2, when people do feel like they're off the grid or that they're living sort of apart from society in ways. I was interested in the ways in which, like, how quickly those boundaries break down, how quickly the people that we thought we were, or the ideals we thought we held, values we thought we held, might go out the window.
Well, part of it then is cruise mentality.
Yeah.
What happens on the ship doesn't count because it's in
Exactly.
international waters.
Exactly.
But the other thing is tension as well. And the tension in that book, and this is not a secret, what happens pretty soon is one by one, they die.
Yeah. Always a great way to introduce tension is a dead body, let me tell you. Writing 101.
and the reader goes along, and until the first body falls, this is a story of people behaving and misbehaving and enjoying themselves and betraying one another and
Yeah.
drinking too much.
Right, and that's really, on purpose too, because I wanted the beginning of the book especially to feel like it's not even quite a thriller. It's just sort of like a sexy, soapy,
Yep, yep.
fun time.
Right. But as soon as there is a death, the reader, the narrator, everybody has the same question, and that becomes, who done it?
Yeah, exactly. And when you're on an island with a limited amount of people, you're like, well, it had to be one of you, but also maybe there's somebody else on the island.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
and in the Christie novels and in other places, if you can't bring yourself to believe that it's one of you, then you have to think out there in the bushes.
Yeah.
There's a killer.
Right, right. And both are terrifying,
Yes, right. And there may be, but
And there may be, exactly.
well, the thing that I liked, one of the things that tickled me when I was going along was that like any reader of mysteries and so on, I'd say, I think I know who did it. And almost, and you did this on purpose. It was very cunning. You point some evidence at this person, and the reader thinks it was him. He's the next victim.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, wrong, completely wrong.
Right. I always say, with thriller readers especially, they read so many thrillers and they're so smart as readers, and you're never going to necessarily fool them all. So it's always a...
Oh, you fooled me in the end.
Okay, well, good.
Oh, absolutely, you did.
Good,
And I've read
good.
1,000.
Yeah, because some people I can fool, some not. It just depends. But I always say, at least I want you to be satisfied. And so I'm always trying to figure out a way. I always want the reader to feel that they're a step or two ahead of the characters. And then I'm always trying to stay a step or two ahead of the reader.
Well, Poirot says, I know who did it. And the reader doesn't know for another 40 pages.
Right, exactly.
We only have a minute. But I understand not only is there another book, but there's another book finished. You have written another book.
Yes,
What is it?
It is The Villa, and it comes out on January 3rd. It is about two best friends who go on a writing retreat to Italy, and they stay at a villa where a famous murder took place in the 70s, and those two stories begin to converge. It's based partially on my obsession with Mary Shelley and the summer that she spent writing Frankenstein with Lord Byron and Percy Shelley and all that. So I took that sort of framework and went from there. Yeah.
Good. Well, January, that's not forever.
It's going to be here before we know it, I'm sure.
Well, that's wonderful. This has been a treat. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me.